What pieces make good team members, good team players? What do you have that makes it work? And obviously, there was an opening, and then we're going to talk about integrity and conscientiousness. Both go hand in hand, both have a lot of great stuff. I got all kinds of green highlights in my book as I direct you guys to do. And at the same time, I want to hear from you first. I'm going to be looking at the attendees because you guys turn your mics on now, which is wonderful. And who wants to get us started on the team ability portion of the attributes? Dorothy, go for it.
I wanted to talk about integrity.
Then do it.
But I was going to wait until you asked me to later.
Let's go. Let's hear it.
You want me to talk about integrity?
Yes, let's go.
Okay, the kid with the test. After hearing that the boy had trouble at home, I would have gone to the administration of the university and without telling them any details about who it was, I would ask if they have extra financial assistance for students who need it and what do you have to do to get that? Because then they don't have to fall back onto, oh, well, he cheated, bam. It's knee-jerk reaction. But let them buy into the guy needs help and help him. And I probably would forget to go see the professor.
Well, I like the fact in this conversation, Dorothy, that, you're bringing in creativity, you're bringing in opportunity, you're bringing something that wasn't in the book as an option. And that's one of the things we've discussed in an earlier attribute of, kind of the preposition attitude of, what can you do to the hill? They only laid out in the book 3 options. And Dorothy said, no, I'm going to take a 4th. And that's wonderful. And yet I want to dive a little deeper on this integrity piece because I think many of us have this attitude of right, wrong, black or white, and forget this context piece and also forget maybe how things evolve over time. And so I want to put in a different piece of this that might help. Because when we think integrity is judging machines, we automatically go into that good or bad, right or wrong judgment environment with that word integrity. And instead, I'd like you to also add to it wholeness, completeness. My iPhone here has a crack in the bottom, and it's one of those custom iPhones. There's not another one exactly the same because it's been broken. So that's what I want you to think of as integrity is wholeness, completeness, because when you fall outside that line, you know it. As the author said later in the chapter, you know in your heart when you're doing right or wrong based on the context of everything going on. And context absolutely matters in this case. And yet I know there's some other parts in here that are challenging you guys. So who else on either the opening or integrity or conscientious has something they want to talk about? I see Glenna's hand coming in. Good morning, Glenna.
Good morning. To me, it seemed like the integrity in that story was not so much about him getting extra scholarship or extra financial aid, because the fact about it is he was staying up with his mom to take care of his mom. That's a health thing. And then you start, and I was wondering in that case, what would I do? First of all, I was thinking, was he really cheating? Because he said, I saw him looking at some papers, sort of like he's cheating. But I would want to talk to the guy. I think in this case, after hearing all the story, I would want to talk to the guy and say, hey, what are you doing? How can I help you? How can I help you study? You know, can I meet with you and we study together? Do you need some help at home? Because there are a lot of problems around that's causing the issue or suspected issue.
Here's the fun part, right on page 205. Each of us knows what right and wrong feels like. And again, for you, Glenn, in this situation, you're going to look then from a heart of service. What else can I do in immediate activity to pour into them? Dorothy went for how can I find them more resources? You went for how can I put more time in? I will tell you absolutely, in my world in this room, there are some people who have the attitude, and it's totally fine as well, that I don't care what else is going on. The right thing is not to cheat no matter what. And so they might take path A. Here's the cool part of this from a team perspective. Knowing each other well enough where that integrity line exists. That's a big part of this as well. Knowing that Dorothy's going to do the extra effort to find resources, Glenna is going to pour into people. They will then, at least you have that consistency on the team of knowing how they're going to respond to these type of challenges where integrity is coming into play. Josh, what do you got?
Well, the tough part of that is you don't really know he was cheating. You may strongly think he was cheating, but you don't truly know that. Now, right, what else would you be doing looking at a sheet of paper and glancing and fidgeting and not showing up at class all the time? But I think it's tough unless you truly know that he was cheating to be able to throw him under the bus like that. And essentially, my response would have been to the teacher, hey, yeah, seems odd that he'd do well and he wasn't here very often and he wasn't the most attentive in class, but I do not know whether or not he was cheating. You would need to confront him about it.
So again, from Josh's perspective, he'd at least show up, he'd have the conversation, he'd be authentic on his observations and inform what he saw and experienced and not make the judgment. Also a cool spot to be. We got great people in this room helping out. I love it.
I have another question then about that. What is
Dorothy.
What is the teacher doing putting the other student on the spot like that? Why doesn't she go directly to the student in question? She's trying to put, I forget his name now.
Well, how do we know, Dorothy, she didn't?
But we know she put him on the spot. We know she asked him. And why did she do that? That I think she was out of line.
Well, here's the fun part for us in our teams. If we had a negative experience with someone in a group environment, let's say I was in this room right now and damn it, I thought Ryan Van Orem said something totally off base. I was triggered by it. It was horrible. And yet I came and asked for your observation as well. And you said, no, Russ, this is really what it's saying. You were tuned out for a second. You didn't hear this context that he set up before. It might be worthwhile to get other people's opinions. And I'm not saying anyone's right or wrong in this. Again, going into these attributes, I think the biggest part of this is gaining more understanding. And like many of you said before, hitting the pause button before we jump to conclusions. Rather than thinking we know what the story is, inquiring more. And you're absolutely right, Dorothy, the teacher inquiring of the student first. Now let's just put on, because Dorothy, you were in the teacher world, as is my daughter. If you ask a student if they were cheating and they are not a person of integrity, what is the answer you're going to get?
Of course not.
And if you're a judgy teacher, I'm not saying that all teachers are judgy. I'm saying, and that's the possibility here. You know, you're already knowing going in, you've already created a story that this is what you're going to get. The key for me, guys, for you though, is how many of you are creating these stories around integrity? How many of you are applying your integrity vision to other people's integrity choices?
Plus, what else I would do as a
Me-
teacher is I would sit and have a conversation with the kid that was cheating and say, hey, I know you can do better than that. What's going on? Can I help you? We're not, yeah. But I'm very unconventional, Russ.
Well, that's why you're hanging out with this group.
I
So
know.
who else? What else you guys have? You're all very quiet here on this Monday morning. And how you show up here is how you show up everywhere. Let's go. Jeanette, I see your microphone's hot. And then Josh, I'm coming back to you.
What I was challenged by it and looking at the circumstances, and I've appreciated the conversation for it. First off, do we really know that he was cheating? Looks like he could have been, and the thought that's coming up as I ask myself is to take a moment and ask myself, what's the right question to ask in this circumstance? And so I don't have a clear, there isn't a clear answer in that, but what's the right question to ask? And Dorothy, everybody has brought out some really good points. So in this place of where I might have walked to judgment, chances are this teacher may or may not have known more about this person's background. And to maybe she jumped to this saying, well, he didn't take place in school. He was just a poor student, so no wonder I'm going to watch him for something like that. And again, when you're paying attention to your classroom, you're looking at what are all the students doing, and just realizing, finding out more about who they are helps you to get better answers, helps you to be the leader that you need to be, so that you can help them be who they're supposed to be. So I learned a lot here about myself
Jeanette,
too.
I'm about to cry, Jeanette. My work is done because you opened with probably the most important element that I drill and teach and discuss, and it just flowed out of you like it was natural. And I'm going back to the note because I wrote it down. What's the right question to ask in this circumstance? I'm always telling you guys, question-driven conversations come from curiosity. Ask. And here's Jeanette, I've only been working with for about 4 years, who it just showed up. What's the right question? Imagine for a moment with everything. Let's forget the attributes a minute. For everything, your default position was, what's the right question to ask in this moment? That's a mic drop, Jeanette. Write that one down, have it on your wall, because that is brilliance. Josh, you were coming back in.
Yeah, so I've got a real world situation going right now, and I'll be curious what everybody's opinion is of this. So I have a deal under contract. A couple days after we put the contract in, the lender, who I've never worked with before, says to me, hey, we've got 6 issues. 5 of them are already clear, but the 6th one's a little sticky. Okay, what's that? Well, we can't call for appraisal until September 1st because we can't get a case number because we've got to let something fall off a bureau, and our closing date is August 25th. So it's going to push the closing, August 30th. So it's going to push the closing back 3 weeks. And the lender sends out an email that I thought the listing agent was on that said, I'm going to need an addendum for the closing and I need this signed. 2 or 3 days later, while we're going through requests for repairs and stuff like that, the listing agent calls me up and chews me out, says that I was untrustful, that I didn't volunteer information, that I knew that the buyer wasn't going to be able to close on time because of a lending situation. And rather than just throw myself on the sword, I was almost confident that the listing agent was on that email where she said, hey, I'm going to need an addendum to move back closing. And so part of me wanted to jump on the listing agent for not reading the email, but I didn't. And I said, well, I've known for a little while, but not substantially that much longer than you've known. And I kind of beat around the bush about it, thinking she was on the email. And so now I go back and look and I'm like, oh man, she was not on the email. So now I'm struggling. I need to call that listing agent back and say, you know what? I was untruthful with you. I knew sooner than I led on to believe And so I'm struggling with that right now. Then again, I don't know how much you're supposed to always inform the other side of a transaction, everything.
What is the actual truth, the integrity of what you believed when you were talking to her?
I believed she had not read the email that the lender had sent out to all parties.
So back up one more step. You believed she was on that email string.
I did.
Okay. So that may be what you actually get to call and have a conversation and own. I am so sorry. I believed you were on this email string. I have gone back and reviewed, and I realize you weren't. I thought the lender communicated directly with you on this change. I apologize. I didn't verify that. And how do we move forward? Because is that not all the truth, Josh?
It is.
Hey, I'm going to ask another fun one in this room. How many of you have drafted a response to someone that was important and either I'll just go with A, and then forgot to hit send? So then you're thinking you talked to them, you're thinking you told them, they're responding like, yeah, raise your hands if you've ever forgotten to hit send. Thank you, Carrie, for your integrity, right? By the way, because we all have, the odds are sharing that with someone when you do that, they'll empathize, another one of the attributes. And I guarantee, Josh, she has been in the same place where she believed that someone was on an email and they weren't. And she's going to at least be able to empathize and understand. And then again, as Jeanette said, what's the question? How do we move forward? Celeste, what do you have, my dear?
Well, I'm going to go with the mindset too of you have to sometimes put on the other person's hat. And maybe, just maybe, she's getting all kinds of, you know what, from her client because they didn't tell her or whoever this person is. So I would go with the understanding of sometimes you have to look at a way to let them know you are taking ownership so they don't look like they're less than awesome. And as you said, Josh, you really believed she was on the email string, but it's so important to put yourself down on the mat and say, I'm taking one for the team. I know I didn't notice the way I should have, but I want you to know that's not who I am. I am always on top of my game. And this is one moment, I am so sorry. All they want to hear is that. And by the way, can I just say in relationships, why don't men say, I'm sorry? I'm just kidding. But
Well, this
we do after a while. You guys just tune it out.
Oh, you really say those words?
We have to say it so many times you don't continue to hear them.
I'm really
and if you didn't on Facebook, I posted a Babylon Bee story of how Methuselah got the same argument for the last 723 years from his spouse. So, I love the fact, Celeste, that you're bringing in our own interpersonal communication, because you're right. We all get to get better at that as well. That's integrity. I suspect that some people don't apologize because they do it in a different way.
Well, and I want to add to that.
Maybe gifts is the apology, so they give you something rather than saying it.
I think, unfortunately, egos get in the way and people just don't ever want to look like they're less than. Instead of realizing we are people and we're doing our best. And there are times where it just doesn't go the way that we thought it would. It's not that we're here to deceive. We're not able to do our best always. And I got to go. I got to take this.
Go grab it. Go put that deal together. And guys, as I have shared with you before, everybody is always doing their best in the moment. Whatever is happening, whatever they're doing, their internal dialogue thinks it's the right path. So everybody is doing the best they can, and all of my suffering is just my judgment of them.
Is this a place
I
where you
choose
say,
not to suffer.
please forgive me instead of I'm sorry? We talked about that in the last couple of weeks, the difference of the results you get.
Absolutely. And you're putting all the power in the other person's hands. That is an excellent nugget as well. Thank you, Jeanette. What else you guys have? You guys haven't even touched conscientiousness yet. Shara, great to see your mic hot. What do you got, my dear?
Well, we have been talking quite a bit about authenticity. And in the context of this conversation, I've had to do this before, even when I don't do paperwork because of things like that. I might not hit send, or I'm trying to work from my phone, which is a nemesis in some ways. And so, I might have said, I am so embarrassed. I need to apologize, or I need to ask your forgiveness. This is what just transpired. And I have a tendency to laugh, even though it's probably not very funny in the moment. But then to reassure them that the goal is to have a very smooth transaction and to exercise transparency. That's really important to me because I always want to have the best possible relationship with the other side. You never know when something's going to turn. And in the transaction, especially if you're extending another 30 days. And back in the day, there was a lot more of that, especially because I did so many short sales for so long. And we may see those come back. I don't, know too much in our market, but that relationship had to be nurtured, because no matter how much you educated a buyer's agent and a buyer about that process, they never got it until they walked through it. Okay, so it just makes me think about who we are in our core. And if we are not that authentic person as yet who would want to establish that relationship and own it, then that's something that we could work on.
Something we get to work on every day, right, Shara?
I'm still working.
I'm sure we all have moments of inauthenticity for some reason or other. Again, the context, the environment. It's just moments of it, and we all get to get better and better and better at it. So thank you for that. That's, by the way, that's going to be a great isolated piece there. That was phenomenal, Shara. All right. Come on. Who else? We got 4 minutes. Let's get conscientious about this stuff.
Well, I'm going to go back with another. I can't talk. Going back with another analogy. With that teacher, she should have sat down with a student she thought cheated, in addition to what I already said, and said, let's give you an incomplete. I will tutor you, and you can take the test later. And
another possible path.
And how can we help you?
If she was consistent, or excuse me, conscientious, Dorothy, let's move into that, because I want to make sure we cover this, because that means some of the personality traits, and personalities are different than attributes. Persistence, thoroughness, and predictability are conscientious personalities, as are resourcefulness, energy, and planning. But here's the author's definition on this conscientiousness piece: the ability and innate desire to be diligent, to be reliable, and to work hard. How many of you would love to fall into those three categories? I saw someone's mic come hot a moment ago. Ryan, what do you got, brother?
This is kind of like a little sidebar, but the sidebar that I'm hearing from a lot of the conversation today is conscientious about the way we speak. And in terms of talking in absolutes, we are hearing so much. If I'm hearing from 10,000 foot view right now, I'm hearing always, I'm hearing never, I'm hearing all of these concepts of absolutes that people are causing themselves higher judgmental towards everyone else because of the fact that you're putting all of that absolute on that conversation. Oh, every buyer's agent is doing this. They never do this. That's not true. And as soon as I hear that, for me, I turn off. I said, your comment doesn't, for me in my head, I turn off and I said, your comment isn't 100% true now. So just be aware of that and conscientious about the way we speak, because you will turn off people if you talk in absolutes.
So Ryan, as a leader and a coach, because I heard that as well, and I want to give all of you this gift here, because there is a coaching element on those absolutes. And Celeste, you were providing to Josh a language to use with his screw up, and it was something like, I'm always XYZ, yet this time I wasn't. So anytime you hear someone you care about and you want to coach, Ryan, use always, never, any of those absolute words. You just give it back to them as a hard and high upswing. So Celeste, if you told me you were always diligent, detailed, organized, structured, I would come back to you and go, always?
Yeah.
And it would create the laugh as we acknowledge, and then we can break state that.
Well, and how about we just say things like, we're doing our best under the certain conditions that we're under. And I know my intention was to make sure you were within that string. We thought you were. And then this is where I reverse it and just say, I got to tell you, I am so sorry. Grovel as an artist, just get it down that people get, go ahead, throw your rocks at me, because I know they're coming. And then that way, they're not going to throw rocks, because they realize no one is perfect. But there are still some that have this spite game going on, that they just feel like it's their place to tell you all the ways you're doing it wrong. And you know what? We all have to suck it up. We do. I mean, we don't want to, but sometimes you just have to know some people are insufferable.
So let's suck it up today.